We are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us, everyone. For those of you who don't know, my name is Lydia Olson, and I am the Technical Specialist for the Massachusetts Rivers Alliance. Welcome to the Rainwater Readiness 2025 Stormwater Workshop and Webinar Series. This webinar series offers information about grant and loan programs that are available to be utilized for stormwater management projects by managers from municipalities, nonprofits, and other organizations that may be considering such projects in the future. We also have some information on technical assistance programs, as you will see today. For the 2025 Stormwater Workshop webinar series topics and schedule, please visit the Mass Rivers Alliance website. We are still adding sessions to the series, so we recommend that you check the site frequently for the latest information. You will also find all the information and recordings for the in-person session of this series, which took place the last week of September, and our previous Stormwater Workshop series in 2023 there. Today's webinar will be discussing grants and technical assistance for small and rural communities. Please mark your calendars for the next webinar, next Thursday, September 13th at noon. We'll be talking about grants available through EEA's Eco One Stop for Growth program. Just a few housekeeping items. This session is scheduled to end at 1 p.m. Please put your name and affiliation in the chat. Please put all your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, which Mass River staff is tracking, or hold them till the last 15 minutes question and answer session. And these webinars are being recorded. Recordings and any other webinar materials will be made available on the Mass Rivers website. Lastly, we ask that you please complete our evaluation survey. This survey has been crucial in helping us continue and expand this series. We will also send it to you after the webinar for you to fill out. And now, I'm delighted to introduce our speakers today. Andrew Evans is a community specialist with RCAP Solutions. He joined RCAP in May 2021. His background is in natural science, geology, and hydrology. He previously worked as the pre-treatment coordinator and laboratory director at a sewage treatment plant in Western Massachusetts. Additionally, Andrew currently serves as the Vermont trustee on the American Waterworks Association New England Section's Board of Trustees. His knowledge of both state and federal environmental laws makes him a valuable asset to the small and rural communities he serves. And Avery Davis, who is a program manager with the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. She specializes in communication and engagement for water and resiliency initiatives across EPA Region 2 and nationally through her work with the Environmental Finance Center Network. With more than 4 years of experience, she provides technical assistance and training to small and rural municipalities and utility leaders on topics including public outreach, education, workforce planning, and infrastructure funding. So with that, I will stop sharing and let our first speaker take it away. And yeah.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you are all set.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that great introduction. Welcome everyone to the RCAP training, also brought to you by Water Environment Federation as part of the Rainwater series brought to you by Mass Rivers Alliance. Many of the materials today were provided by WEF in partnership with RCAP. WEF is a non-for-profit technical and educational organization of more than 30,000 individual members and 75 affiliated member associations representing water quality professionals around the world. Since 1928, WEF and its members have protected public health and the environment. Again, my name is Andrew Evans. My expertise is in the field of water and wastewater treatment with 18 years of experience working primarily in Massachusetts, but I got my start here in Southern Vermont, where I currently live. I also work with many public and private entities in Massachusetts on stormwater projects. Beyond my professional interest in the field of water treatment, I'm also an avid fisherman. You might see a picture of a fish with me later on. So it impacts me on a personal level too regarding recreation, of course, ecological resource management. Now, a little bit about RCAP and RCAP Solutions. RCAP, or Rural Community Assistance Partnership, is a national nonprofit organization providing training and technical assistance to rural communities and tribes on drinking water, wastewater, and solid waste issues. We have approximately 200 field staff, including certified operators and professional engineers. Our staff members have expertise in drinking water and wastewater treatment and operations, utility financing, management, and general administration. We work in all 50 states plus 5 U.S. territories. We are comprised of 6 regional offices and 1 national office. Our region, RCAP Solutions, the purple section there in the Northeast, and U.S. Virgin Islands, as well as Puerto Rico. The lower picture zoomed in there shows all the project locations currently active, and each color represents a different funder with federal grants from USDA, HHS, and the EPA, as well as some state level funding as well. The Stormwater webinar has been funded by the US EPA under the Training and Technical Assistance Grant for Wastewater Treatment Works and the Prevention, Reduction, and Elimination of Pollution. The contents of this presentation do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of the US EPA, nor do they endorse trade names or recommended commercial products that might be mentioned here. All right, now that the housekeeping's done and complete, we can move on to the contents of today's webinar. In this portion that I'm presenting, we'll go over definitions and a brief introduction. We'll discuss goals, challenges, centralized versus decentralized networks, green and gray infrastructure options, BMPs, maintenance, EPA resources, and funding, which again, Avery will present later on from EFC, a partner organization of ours. Looking forward to that. All right, now let's start with a basic question. What is stormwater? Where does it come from and where does it go? It's like something out of Dr. Seuss, isn't it? Well, the US EPA defines stormwater as rain or snow melt that flows over the land or impervious surfaces, such as paved streets, parking lots, and buildings from rooftops, and it doesn't soak into the ground. Okay, that's the most important thing. And stormwater is absorbed into the soil, is filtered, and ultimately it can replenish aquifers, slowly moving through the ground and possibly getting into the rivers that way and lakes. When it flows across the land surface, stormwater becomes polluted as it picks up and carries and transports various pollutants, such as oil and grease, chemicals, sediments, nutrients, and pathogens that can all be on the streets, drains, open channels, and storm sewers. In urban areas, stormwater management is especially important because it decreases the natural land cover and the expansion of impervious surfaces such as rooftops, sidewalks, and roadways. These surfaces exacerbate runoff because they change the permeability of the landscape, preventing rainwater from soaking in and infiltrating into the soil. Some of these impacts of stormwater include flooding, sewer overflows, and non-point pollution as well. Now let's look more closely at some of these concepts, because there's a lot to this, right? Now, runoff. Runoff is the movement of water across the land surface instead of being absorbed by the soil. The water flows over the ground, eventually making its way to streams, rivers, lakes, and other water bodies. Runoff can pick up and deposit harmful pollutants like trash, chemicals, dirt, and sediment, streams, and rivers, and lakes. So when we are talking stormwater, we're talking about runoff, right? Rain and snow melt falls across the landscape, and generally stormwater comes from the moisture that collects and needs to be conveyed along impervious surfaces or semi-impervious surfaces. I could watch that graphic all day. I like that one. So what's an impervious surface? An impervious surface is an altercation to the ground that makes it hard, where precipitation does not soak in. For example, pavement. It's expressed generally in square units, such as square feet, and it typically excludes lawns, landscaped areas, gardens, forested lands. Generally, the more of this you have, the more runoff you'll experience, and it will quickly impact receiving streams and lakes with rapid runoff volume. Here's an example of how it works. The natural surface will absorb the water and go into the soil. This isn't considered stormwater unless it runs off. It sheds to something like pavement that might be nearby and then a stormwater grate. However, with the impervious surface, the water is easily transported away from the first location and it goes right down the street, as you can see. And then what does it do? It all flows by gravity. And this presents some challenges. As the water flows by gravity, it collects to drains and it all adds up. And lots of precipitation and lots of altered land. It's water quality and quantity problems. I can imagine that we have both of those going on right here in this graphic. And I love this video. It reminds me of the time back in high school. I was walking to the parking lot across the street, and one of the schoolmates that I had absolutely soaked me by driving through a puddle. And that was a very cold and wet ride home. But largely, this is the goal, right? To not have this happen, to convey the stormwater safely away from the roads that can cause flooding, while also trying to provide the best mitigation possible for runoff, sediments, and pollutants. So we're trying to do both if we possibly can. There are two ways to reduce pollution from stormwater. We can reduce the pollutants in stormwater to begin with, and we can reduce the amount of stormwater runoff. As long as there's precipitation, there's going to be stormwater runoff, but we can reduce potential pollution that goes with it, and that can go a long way in helping our surface waters, right? Reducing the amount of impervious surface will greatly reduce the amount of runoff, may even slow the flow of water off-site. Water collection systems can be used to collect water off the roof and can be used for irrigation later on, watering your garden during drier spells, that sort of thing. Bioswales can be used to slow and filter water before moving to streams. Vegetative buffers and increasing those vegetated areas can really slow down the movement of the water as well. Stormwater is managed using storm sewers as well as stormwater controls, which can include green infrastructure and low impact development. We're going to cover a little bit later. As far as treatment goes, there's really three main types. We have physical, biological, and chemical. Under physical, we can have erosion and sediment control. We can try to filter the water. We can use sedimentation basins, and we can use the thermal action of the planet, right? It's going to evaporate as well. Biological treatment, we have degradation of organic matter, can denitrify as well. And we have plant growth in these areas too. They're going to help with nutrient uptake. Chemicals can also be used, coagulants. We can precipitate chemicals out of the solution. We can use oxidation and ion exchange as well to remove pollutants. That's going to be costly. Reducing peak flows by using detention basins, protecting water quality, and the ecosystem. That picture on the right, I believe, is from a trip I took to Lake Champlain. That was last year. There was a lot of runoff. We had repeated storms. There was higher water table. You can see it's in pretty rough shape. This year I went, didn't have that problem, but the water was a lot lower due to the drought. So, it's one problem or another sometimes, especially as climate change is happening. Now let's look at the infrastructure we use in stormwater management, typically referred to as green or gray infrastructure, configured in centralized or decentralized ways, and often in configurations or some combination of that. Gray infrastructure is what we see the most. It's culverts, it's curbs, gutters, drain pipes, retention basins. This can all be part of a centralized network or decentralized, and still be part of green infrastructure as well if it leads to some sort of natural or constructed treatment process. Centralized systems are a network of piping in a watershed or sub-watershed that comes together with a common endpoint, often simply being a pipe leading to a river or lake. While centralized stormwater management can minimize urban flooding impacts upstream, this does not reduce flooding effects in the streams and floodplains themselves. This runoff will greatly contribute to stream flows and flooding near the river and lake, right? It all has to go somewhere. However, in contrast, decentralized systems manage stormwater through collection, storage, and cleaning using cost-effective solutions that mimic natural systems to retain water on site where possible. Reuse the water as well, like we talked about. Recharge groundwater and infiltration further up in the watershed. As you can see in that small schematic there to the left, I should have made it bigger. The devices are scattered about and placed away from the river channels. Try to capture that water before it gets there. And those are provided by USGS. They're pretty good. Rain gardens are an example. It's a depressed area, or for decentralized, these things you might see scattered about. Depressed area in the landscape that collects rainwater from a roof or a driveway. Could be an entire street even. Allows the water to soak into the ground, planted with grass and flowers. They can be a cost-effective solution to reducing runoff from your property and your neighbors as well. Rain gardens can help filter out pollutants and runoff and provide food and shelter for butterflies and songbirds and other wildlife. Rain harvesting can reduce the runoff from roofs in particular. You can store that water for irrigation later or washing your car, that type of thing. We talked about bioswales, often found along curbs and in big parking lots. They use vegetation or mulch to slow down and filter the stormwater. Bioswales are essentially like rain gardens. They're just long and narrow. Kind of look at it that way. We have constructed wetlands. They use natural processes similarly, but with wetland plants and vegetation and soils. They're going to stay wet more often and more frequently, also do a good job. But detention basins collect and allow the water also to be retained on site, but they don't do as much for actual treatment, and they can be a vector for mosquitoes, that sort of thing. But they are commonly used in decentralized systems. Though green infrastructure can potentially have higher installation costs in redevelopment and retrofits, it's not always the case due to the site-specific opportunities and constraints on many infrastructure projects. Since gray infrastructure retrofits can also be costly, green infrastructure can be integrated into an already planned infrastructure improvement project to help mitigate demolition and disposal costs. It is important to compare the long-term maintenance and replacement costs associated with green and gray infrastructure. The vegetation characteristic of many green infrastructure practices become enhanced as it grows over time, whereas gray infrastructure and engineered materials actually deteriorate over time. The maintenance required for green infrastructure practices typically don't require heavy equipment either, whereas maintaining gray infrastructure uses big trucks and pipes and excavators to install and maintain, right? Besides green infrastructure's ability to improve water quality and reduce stormwater pollution, green infrastructure reduces the cost of cleaning up our waterways later on too. If we can manage it further upstream, it's going to improve the downstream quality of the water. That saves money too. But one thing you got to remember is that you got to look at local codes, design standards, and planning documents prior to implementing any of this stuff. You got to look and make sure that the law allows for you to put this in, or conversely, some places may require it. We won't be covering MS4 permits or TMDLs in this. There's other webinars in the series. I've put the link up here that go into that in greater detail if you want to learn more. I believe there's a couple that are actually previously recorded. So that's a little bit different and more detailed. We won't approach that today, but it's worth knowing that it's out there. There are lots of types of green infrastructure we touched on. We've got a couple of examples here: green roofs and rain barrels. Again, they reduce the impacts locally. We also have trees and bioswales. These are pictures of them. Trees also help with shade, right? And they also improve air quality. Permeable pavements can do a great job of reducing stormwater while maintaining usable space. Green spaces can also help buffer runoff, often seen around large parking lots. It also helps filter that water back into the aquifer, which is what you want, and not running off. Green infrastructure improves air quality, which I mentioned, reducing heat island impacts, and reduces greenhouse gases by sequestering carbon in the environment. The construction is also generally more eco-friendly as well. That concrete and the rest is pretty bad for the environment. Water quality improvements have been well documented, as I mentioned, where green infrastructure replaces gray infrastructure. Public health and safety is also impacted in a positive way. And finally, green infrastructure is a great opportunity to educate the public on water quality issues, ecological impacts, and more. Often a small sign like this can be used to convey a message to inform viewers about the facility's impacts. There are a few steps that municipalities should take before undertaking a green infrastructure project or initiative: reviewing the planning documents and codes, like I mentioned, securing funding, which we'll talk about more later, and planning for maintenance and training staff. I'm going to cover that here pretty soon, and identifying potential projects and stratifying those, making sure you prioritize them correctly. This figure summarizes these steps and specific actions that are needed to begin planning and installing and maintaining green infrastructure. That's a good reference guide. Pretty simple. Harder in practice, but it's a good guide. And now a section on O&M and BMPs. The way I look at this is that O&M is the planning and execution for staff to implement the stormwater program. BMPs are more representative of the equipment and infrastructure used in stormwater management. Both are critically important. Okay. This infrastructure cannot be ignored. Consider developing and operating an O&M plan or manual if you don't already have one. O&M plans include basic elements such as identifying parties responsible for the maintenance, the schedule of that maintenance, inspection requirements, the frequency of those inspections. You might need to have a filing system for easements and covenants for maintenance. Identify funding sources. Keep a filing system of that. You'll want to remember who you can get the funding from and how those practices work. A description of basic maintenance activities like weeding, mulching, trimming, and shrubbing, trimming of shrubs, replanting, sediment removal, catch basins, all included in this. Very important. Construct and maintain stormwater drainage system mapping and asset inventory. So they can really assist in this process. Something RCAP provides as well as other organizations to help you with this, at least in small areas, and to get you started. Street sweeping, another critical component. Construct and maintain water quality installations. You can do this on public property. You could even do it on private property. It could be an initiative to require it and also require not only the installation, but the maintenance of it too. Again, you would have to have an accounting system for all of that. BMP's technical term for water quality installations, devices, practices, or methods that are used to manage stormwater runoff by controlling peak runoff rate, improving water quality, and managing runoff. There are dozens of different BMP types depending on the type of infrastructure you're working on. But as you can see, you got all this different networks and all the equipment associated with it to make sure that it's maintained. BMPs can also be a design choice. You can have a natural area for runoff where available to have the flow go to, such as this green space, rather than drains that you traditionally see with the curb stops, at least where available. Again, some places you won't have this opportunity, but where you can make that design option change, you can implement it quite easily. And now some resources. EPA has made a wonderful searchable toolbox as well, with step-by-step guides, lots of different tools and categories. You can find different search criteria as well with the search function. User can search by subject or state. You can find logos, surveys, evaluations, media campaigns, tips, posters, so much more. You don't have to make it from scratch. Typically, whatever you need for non-point source pollution, runoff, stormwater education, you can find it here. As well as some of these resources as well. We have EPA's site that I just mentioned and some other additional resources. A lot of the training materials that I got today were from WEF. And now here I am showing off a picture. So I think we're going to be learning a little bit more from Avery now about how to fund all this stuff. And I'm excited to hear about it.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. I will take it from here. Pulling up my slides, y'all. All right. Lydia, was there anything you wanted to add before I jump in?
No, go for it.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. So Lydia already gave a good introduction, so I'll just keep it short. My name is Avery Davis. I'm a program manager based out of the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center based in Syracuse, New York. We've been involved with the Environmental Finance Center network pretty much since it was founded. I think approaching 3 decades now. So I'll give a little information about the Environmental Finance Center network to start. I'm going to touch on funding sources. I'm not going to get too in the weeds with funding, but I will specifically be speaking to a few USDA sources, and we'll spend some time at the end on the emerging contaminants and small and disadvantaged communities grant as well. So I'll be jumping around a bit. But the beginning of this presentation is going to focus on the Environmental Finance Center Network, or EFCN, services to help small and rural communities build capacity and ultimately fund and or plan and fund their water infrastructure improvements, with a little extra attention being paid to stormwater. All right, a little bit about us. Hopefully this might be a little repetitive to some of y'all who attended the last session I was on, but I did try to mix things up a bit. The Environmental Finance Center Network, or EFCN, is a university and nonprofit-based organization that creates innovative solutions to the difficult how-to-pay issues of environmental protection and water infrastructure. So we work both collectively as a network, as a collaborative, but also independently through our individual institutions, which I will show you in a few slides, to provide these services across all 50 states and territories, as well as the Navajo Nation. So I'll get into our services more shortly, but we assist both the public and private sectors through training, free support services, durable resources, and innovative policy ideas. So today I'm going to be speaking specifically to this funding program that supports our work from EPA. So all of the services I'm going to be speaking to are supported by this training and technical assistance grant from the Environmental Protection Agency. It's pretty wordy. Here's also my housekeeping, similar to Andrew, our funding disclosure. The EPA does not necessarily endorse this presentation, nor do they discriminate against similar institutions that are not mentioned today. So take it with a grain of salt. But the training and technical assistance to improve water quality and enable small public water systems to provide safe drinking water is the program supporting the bulk of this work. And you might be thinking, drinking water, where does wastewater and stormwater come in? That's where that area 1 and area 2 of this funding source come in, which I'll speak to more shortly. But the shorthand for this program is the EFCN Smart Management for Small Water Systems program, or even shorter, the Small Systems program. And this has been around for over a decade now, long before my time here at the network. But this collaboration has been going for quite a time, and we're excited to continue to expand that impact. So our project leadership, because I mentioned we are a collaborative, the EFCN isn't necessarily its own functioning nonprofit. It's a collaborative of these different institutions. But we are led by the Southwest Environmental Finance Center, based out of the University of New Mexico. They are the lead. They received the funding from EPA, with co-leadership from my center, based out of Syracuse University, as well as the Environmental Finance Center, based out of Wichita State University in Wichita, Kansas. So we have a very wide-reaching pool of partners as a bench of expertise here, and we'll look at some 10 to 12 other organizations shortly that are also involved to support this work. Okay. So there's a lot of text on this slide. This is the name of that area 1 I was saying for that funding source from EPA. So that doesn't really matter, but what I do want to draw your attention to is this blurb in the corner. So through that funding, we are able to support drinking water systems that are considered small and disadvantaged. And what is considered small in our eyes, and by EPA's by the funding source, that is a community and non-community water system serving a population of less than 10,000 persons. Looking at wastewater, again, very wordy, but this is that second area 2 of that funding source, which lets us serve small publicly owned wastewater systems, as well as on-site and decentralized wastewater systems. So a small wastewater system is considered a small publicly owned treatment work, or PA2EW. that treats less than 1 million gallons per day of wastewater, in addition to communities with on-site and decentralized wastewater infrastructure. Meant to circle that while I was talking there. You might be thinking, well, what about stormwater? Well, there are some exceptions here that allow us to work with communities on stormwater projects. So we can provide, well, for municipal Department of Public Works, for sewer authorities, and for other small systems operators who need training and support. Some stormwater related things. Well, if you need help with these things related to stormwater, these are the cases we might be able to help you out with that. Um, that might include understanding increasingly stringent discharge limits and any new techniques in order to reduce discharges. We can also help with the planning, funding, or actual implementation of green infrastructure or stormwater related projects. And finally, a little bit of a special case, if your community is served by a significant number of septic systems, and maybe you have a regional entity, a bigger entity that's not necessarily small, that is exploring some decentralized water management strategies, is exploring green infrastructure. That is another case where we might be able to support a larger community on stormwater related challenges. All right, what we offer. So we offer a ton of resources. One of our primary offerings is events, is virtual and in-person training. So I'll get more in the weeds with the training shortly, but a state training is typically state specific. They're typically longer. They can be offered both in person and virtual. And we almost always offer training contact hours for water or wastewater operators in your state. So an example of this, we just offered a introduction to surface water treatment course for Massachusetts systems that was approved for continuing education credits or training contact hours in the state of Massachusetts. We also offer national webinars. These are for a national audience. They are shorter and they cover a very wide range of topics. Some other resources. We're going to dig into the technical assistance here more in depth shortly, but we offer free support services. That is one of our primary offerings. We really look at technical assistance as really augmenting your staff time. Like think about, is there anything on your plate that it would be easier to get some extra external support with? We also offer tools and resources to make that a little bit easier for you as well day to day. And then finally, we offer a host of educational content. These include blogs, educational videos, animations, podcasts, all things for you to either read on your own time or listen to on the go. And I should mention that all of these resources are almost always tailored to small and rural municipalities specifically. All right. Might be some repetition here, as I mentioned some of these previously. Registering for a training. This is just a little QR code if you want to go to our training and events page. Like I said, we have new trainings and new webinars coming out all the time. This here is just to help kind of explain the differences between state trainings and national webinars in our eyes, because obviously this is a bit of an arbitrary distinction that we use in the network. But for our state trainings, those topics are typically chosen by your state agencies. I believe in Massachusetts, it was selected by Massachusetts DEP at the very start of project kickoff. For our national webinars, the main difference there is they're shorter. We do not offer training contact hours because they're national, but you will receive a certificate. And these topics are either selected by the instructor or come from a past request from an event attendee. So check out our webpage if you want to look at our new training and webinar offerings. They are coming out all the time. We are My center in particular is the one that does the marketing for these events, and let me tell you, there are a lot of them. So definitely keep an eye out. Technical assistance. I'm going to spend some more time on this later, but I just wanted to show our um, our our web pages here. This is our Get Help page where you can see our full list of services as well as our request form. So more information on this in just a second. And then our resources, some of which I mentioned already, are tools and publications. Um, some examples of tools that we offer are things like an asset management dashboard, various affordability tools to help you set rates that are affordable to your customers. All of those educational materials I mentioned previously are located in our multimedia library. So that includes blogs, podcasts, and videos. And then finally, we offer what we call funding tables, which are really just a spreadsheet that compiles all of the water-related funding sources in your state. I believe our Massachusetts funding table was last updated in 2024, so it is due for an update, which I believe we will be tackling in this latest round of funding. Okay, now getting in a little bit more into the weeds here to our technical assistance services. So I'm not going to recap who is eligible. What I really want to focus on here is just the broad list of partners, and not even all of them are listed here. So we have a super deep bench of expertise, which really helps us meet the communities who are closest to us, like exactly where they're at. It allows us to come to your system in person and to really expand that reach and connection. Something I want to call attention to here is the New England Environmental Finance Center, who is the state of Massachusetts Regional Environmental Finance Center. So they are involved in our network. They're a fantastic resource. And I also want to mention, just since we're touching on stormwater, the New England EFC's program, the SNEP network, which specifically has expertise and training and technical assistance for stormwater management, ecological restoration, amongst other things as well. So definitely check out these resources. All right, some technical assistance services. So funding and financial management. This can include things like identifying the best fit funding programs for your project. So if you don't even know where to start with your funding sources, we can help you narrow that list. We can also provide guidance on eligibility requirements and application timelines. We can support you in actually developing the application, writing the application, submitting the application to make sure it's strong and competitive. We can provide guidance on financial sustainability and cost effectiveness, or even potentially identify funding to either match or supplement funding that you've already received. Asset and utility management. This could include creating an asset management plan, repairing or replacing equipment, managing your utility effectively, planning for climate threats. We also offer services on regulatory compliance and reporting. So things like complying with Davis-Bacon Act or Build America, Buy America regulations, or guidance, managing your NPDES permits, understanding Safe Drinking Water Act compliance, public engagement and partnerships. This can include public engagement strategies, training for your boards and your elected officials, public involvement in decision making, group facilitation, like regional partnerships. It's a pretty broad category. And one of my favorites, which is workforce development and leadership. This is really where my expertise sits. We can help you with various workforce challenges and solutions for your water workforce, whether that's leadership development, succession planning, job description review, recruitment support, even salary studies we've done in the past. And then finally, I would say our broadest category, which is our technical support. That includes a whole host of things such as GIS mapping, water and wastewater math, various operator training, water reuse and recycling, I&I management, cybersecurity, very, very broad category. So I'm going to keep moving because we already spoke to the funding and financial management. Now I just want to get into a couple examples, a couple case studies of some recent support initiatives from the network. So this is a recent technical assistance project. The community partner in this case was the Borough of Hanover in Pennsylvania. The EFCM partner that was the lead for this project was the Environmental Finance Center based out of the University of Maryland. And for this particular project, the entity that we were collaborating with was actually the Stormwater Authority in Hanover. So they were really looking to finance a gasification plant to take up wastewater residuals and free up space in their bioswales. They also had some inflow and infiltration problems. They wanted to put some sensors in their catchment system, amongst various other stormwater management upgrades. So part of this initiative was to better manage their water resources under a comprehensive water management plan using a one water approach that combined the planning and management of drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. So with the help of the University of Maryland EFC, they were able to apply for this Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection Growing Greener Plus grant. This was submitted in, I believe, May 2025, and they're expected to find out the result in this winter, I believe, this winter. So we're still waiting to find out there, but really this funding is intended to help this community and their stormwater utility pave the critical path to better prioritize their projects and ultimately manage their water resources under a comprehensive approach. Not pictured here, the second half. Not pictured here, the second half of this technical assistance effort is still taking place. UMD will actually be presenting this one water approach concept to the stormwater authorities, to their council or board, and will ultimately be training them on how to implement the approach. I saw a message about, isn't there a EFC in University of Massachusetts or UMass? That's a good question. There are a whole host of new environmental finance centers that have been designated these past few years. So I believe UMass collaborates with the New England EFC as well. So there's definitely some connection there. All right, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but this is just a technical assistance success story. This partner was, this community partner was in Hallstatt, Minnesota, and they are a super small community of only just over 500 people. The lead here was our friends at the Great Lakes Environmental Infrastructure Center, which is the EFC for Region 5, EPA Region 5 in the Great Lakes region. And in this case, the community really realized that in order to advance any of their wastewater upgrades, in order to access any federal and state infrastructure funding, they needed to figure out how to fund a preliminary engineering report. So to help move this project forward, we recommended that they apply for this USDA Rural Development Search Grant in order to help fund that report. So some information on that program. The search grant is a special evaluation assistance for rural communities and household grant. It's a really great planning grant, especially if you are the smallest of the small communities. You have to be less than 2,500 people, and you have to have an MHI or median household income that's either below the poverty line or less than 80% of the statewide non-metropolitan median household income. Another program not included here is the USDA Water and Waste Disposal Pre-Development Planning Grant, or PPG. That is a very similar grant, but that's for communities of 10,000 or less. So I definitely recommend checking that one out as well. But the support here, we helped connect Hallstatt with their USDA RD county representative. We helped them actually navigate RD Apply in order to submit their application. We helped them procure their engineering firm in order to follow the various procurement guidelines. And ultimately, we completed the application on their behalf last year in July 2024 and helped gather all of the required information to get that application submitted. The outcome here is that by November that year, Hallstatt was awarded $30,000 through that program, which did allow them to proceed with that PER. So this is really the first step in even moving forward any of these upgrades, because now with having this preliminary engineering report in hand, they are then able to go after other federal and state funding sources, such as the state revolving funds. We only have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to keep going, but this is our website here. If you want to request help, you can do so at that button in the corner. You're going to have access to these slides, so if you do want to look at our services and access our request form, you can do so with this QR code. But what I really want to get to now, and I'm sorry for flying through this, is the Emerging Contaminants in Small or Disadvantaged Communities grant. So what is this grant program? It is a Massachusetts DEP administered grant for public water suppliers with projects that address emerging contaminants in drinking water. So emerging contaminants, specifically, an example of that is PFAS, which are your per and polyfluoroalkyl alcohol substances, otherwise known as forever chemicals. I'm sure we're all hearing about it more and more, but this program is really intended to help address those contaminants. So it's intended to support the planning, design, construction, testing, and source water protection activities that reduce and prevent emerging contamination at the drinking water source. So I highlighted here source water protection because that is really what allows this program to interact with stormwater activities. So we'll look at it shortly, but there's a category that deals specifically with stormwater or with source water activities related to emerging contaminants, which includes projects that help protect source water from runoff and other emerging contamination. And this is funded by the US EPA, so it's administered by Mass DEP with funding with federal dollars. All right, who is eligible? Well, eligibility under this program is pretty specific. A project needs to be connected to a public water supplier for drinking water, whether that's public or private, publicly or privately owned community systems, and some nonprofit, non-community systems as well. So either if you're not considered small, you may be considered disadvantaged. So if you want to gauge whether or not you fit the state's criteria for that, you can click this link with the Clean Water Trust, which will take you to the Mass DEP webpage, or scan this QR code here. I will note that small systems that are not disadvantaged may also be considered if you are shown to have to lack the capacity to incur debt to finance that project or activity. So there are some exceptions here. Some special eligibility cases. There are situations where for-profit systems and non-transit, non-community systems and or medium or large community systems may qualify if that project is consolidating or interconnecting a system with a qualifying community public water supplier. So that public water supplier would need to be the grantee. And similarly, there's also some room to use this funding to help connect households that have private wells with a potential emerging contaminant concern to a qualifying community public water supplier. Though again, they must be the grantee. Some eligible product category or project categories include the research, planning, design, treatment, and pilot testing for emerging contaminant removal, water system restructuring, interconnection, consolidation, technical assistance, public education, and workforce development. And that workforce development component is making sure that your team can actually see these infrastructure investments through. So giving you the training you need to see these through. Source water activities related to emerging contaminants, including activities that reduce them from entering source water from land uses. More on this shortly. And then providing households with access to drinking water services. So drawing attention to this source water activity line, I just want to tie back to some areas, some potential eligible products for stormwater in particular. But I did provide here, this is all clickable. This will take you to the full implementation manual, which has a very comprehensive list of projects for you to refer to. But some examples of stormwater related activities could include source water protection planning, whether that's modeling, mapping, or assessing, EC transport in your watershed, various monitoring or studies to identify emerging contaminants linked to stormwater runoff, stormwater controls that trap or treat emerging contaminants before they reach the drinking water source, and also some nutrient and sediment reduction strategies that help prevent emerging contaminant formation in source waters. So the key here is that it's gotta really tie back to drinking water source protection for a emerging contaminant problem. So you have to partner, if you're not a public water supplier, you have to partner with a public water supplier and they have to be the actual grantee. Lastly, how to apply. If your community has an emerging contaminant project in mind, the first thing you need to do is submit a needs assessment survey to the Mass DEP Drinking Water Program. And so this is clickable. This will take you right there. From there, the Mass DEP would review your eligibility, review your scope, and then share that with EPA for a final review. And then once approved, you would get that award letter issued by Mass DEP, as well as any contract paperwork. And then after that's complete, you can begin invoicing. Some stuff I want to point out here is that you might notice this is a bit different of a grant application process than you might be used to. And the reason for that is because this funding is non-competitive. And what that means is that these projects are being reviewed as they come in, and they're being awarded as they come in. So as a project is submitted, it's reviewed on a case-by-case basis by Mass DEP, then by EPA, and then if they decide, yes, this is within scope of this grant, it's a good use of these funds, then they will go ahead and award it on a rolling basis. So it's non-competitive, which means you are more likely to get this funding if you act now. So I would encourage you to act quickly if it's something you're interested in. This is just the contact information for the program manager from Mass DEP. I am not the contact for this grant. And if you do have very specific questions in Massachusetts, I encourage you to reach out to this contact here or visit the webpage. And that is it. That is all for me. I know I covered a lot of info, and I know we're at the end of time. So sorry about that, Lydia.
That's okay. I'd rather have all of the info in there from you and Andrew, and then any questions we have afterwards, we can either stay for a few minutes or I can send along to you guys as well. But it actually doesn't, so we don't have any questions in the Q&A. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to put it in the chat or the Q&A or just raise your hand and ask the speakers directly.
Yeah, and I'll drop some links in the chat while we're
Thank you.
waiting.
appreciate that. Um, I always take no questions as a good sign that everyone's just processing the information and, you know, hopefully you guys will get some new applicants soon.
Yeah, and if folks have any questions afterwards, they're welcome to reach out offline. I want to note just like the technical assistance community is very tight knit. We actually work with RCAP solutions as well, mostly in New York and New Jersey. So I haven't encountered Andrew directly, but just so you know, if one of us can't help you, we're pretty good about connecting you with someone who can.
Yeah. And we'll also have a link to the New England Finance Center as well. If you guys have any specific New England questions. But it doesn't look like there are any, so which I'll take as a good sign. Wonderful. Thank you to Andrew and Avery again for your wonderful presentations. Just so everyone knows, all the resources will be up on the website. And you know, if you have any questions, you guys can reach out to them directly or yeah, through my servers. But thank you everyone and have a good one.